It's a pretty phenomenal story. I mean, I've been telling my story as a minister for 17 years, actually longer than that. I wrote a book. My first book was Every Man Has a Price, and it was basically the story that I tell. Um, but I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I came into the New York area, and Peter Fierro, who directed this and edited it, put it together, Pete approached me as he says, "I'm doing a favor for a friend who wants an interview from you." It was like what we call a shoot interview. So shoot interview meaning we're not talking wrestling storylines, we're talking real life. So when you start talking to me about real life, I'm going to start telling you about what I believe God has done in my life. And so as I'm telling the story, in Pete's own words, he said, I'm at the time the somewhat backslidden son of a minister. His dad is a minister, and I had no idea of that. And apparently, my story resonated with Pete, and it helped Pete, turn his life back around. And so after that, anytime that I might be coming to the New York area and speaking somewhere, he would come out and see me and hear me share that story again. And finally, he came to me one day and he said, "Look," he said, "you know what?" He says, "I know you tell your story, and I know you've written a book about it." He says, "I'd like to put it in film." And okay, and that's what I knew. Pete did, wedding photography and video, so he documents weddings. But this is more like a movie piece. And I said, "Well, okay, if I'll be your guinea pig, if you want to tell the story, great." I never envisioned what's happened. I mean, I never, in my wildest dream, thought it would go to the lengths that it's gone. That it would take as much time as it took to put it together, and then to watch it and realize what a phenomenal job I believe Pete did. I mean, there's so many of my contemporaries in this that were interviewed, including a couple who have passed. Georgie Animal Steel, Roddy Piper, no longer with us, but Terry Funk and Harley Race. I mean, Lex Luger. Gosh, Gene Okerlund. So many guys were interviewed in this, and so when I sat down and I watched my own story for the first time, it brought me to tears. And but the process was a long one. I know Pete said to me, he said, "I want to." He says, "I hear you talk about when you were young, and your dad had died, and your mom had sank into alcoholism, and you're in this little town, and you would go out to the desert cemetery where your father's buried, and you would pray and seek counsel." He says, "I want you to, I want to go to Wilcox. I want to film Wilcox, and I want you to take me to that place." And so we go out to Wilcox. Well, my son Ted Jr., he comes along, and Pete will tell you this is funny. My son is very protective of his dad, and he's like, he wasn't so sure about Pete. He says, "I wasn't sure whether I was gonna like him or beat him up." Maybe thought somebody was taking advantage of his dad, right? And so he sees Wilcox for the first time, and he's like, "Dad, what did you do here?" He said, "It took like 10 minutes to see the entire town." And I said, "Exactly." And so when we went out to the cemetery, he said, "I want to go like you went at night." Well, Pete really set me up. I mean, I thought, well, okay, we're going to go out there and he's going to interview me in this setting. And we get out there and he says, "Ted," he says, here's where I want you to go, man." He said, I want you to think as if you haven't been here in a long time." And I said, "The truth is, I haven't been here in a very long time." And he said, "But I'm saying you haven't been here since you left, like high school, college, and all these things have happened in your life, and you're coming back to visit your dad for the first time." And oh my gosh, I mean, so I start talking to my dad like I did when I was in high school, and the tears just start coming. And it's just like, and I told Pete later, I said, "Boy, you really set me up for that." But it was real. It was organic, and it was heartfelt. So we put this thing together. It was like a 3-year process. I mean, with a lot of setbacks and what have you. But now it's done. And then, my son, Ted Jr. had, he was with the WWE for 5 years. He was rocking. did a movie, The Marine 2, got a lot of accolades for that, and he's met a lot of people, and so he comes along, and again, he interjects this. He said, Dad, he says, how about we tell your story? It's your story, it's Mom's story, it's our story, but how about we tell it like seen through my eyes? And I went, wow, because I speak a lot, and I do a lot of speaking to men. I talk about the significance of having a wonderful dad in your life and how important it is. And so I said, okay. And so that's what we do. Well, when we complete this project, my son told me, he said, Dad, he says, I know the guys, the marketing people who have marketed some of the biggest faith-based movies in the country, God's Not Dead, God's Not Dead 2, Fireproof, Blind Side. He said, I'm sending them the documentary. And he said, I got a message back that they would get back to me after Christmas. Well, this is like, a week before Christmas. And he calls me the next day and he said, Dad, they called me back today. And they said, we love this and we want to help you get it out there. So all of a sudden this project goes to, oh my gosh, it's going to be a Fathom event. Fathom meaning, it's going to be seen between 650 to 700 theaters across the United States for a one-night showing. And apparently, if it does really well, they could even do an encore event. And so this thing has turned into something much bigger than I had ever envisioned. And it happened organically. And so that's what we're looking at now. I mean, we already have people, significant people that want to distribute the DVDs, and Netflix is interested, and it's like, okay. I was even told that they were getting a lot of calls from Canada to see if possibly they could do a Fathom event in Canada, because I've spoken all over Canada over the past 10 or 12 years, and so I don't know. This thing is like kind of taking on a life of its own.